So to get a more complete sense of what it looks like when InfoSec teams are interacting with the rest of the company, I just talked to as many people as I could at different size companies, different industries, about their experiences working with InfoSec, what went well and what didn't go well. And you don't need to read all of these miserable quotes. I'm going to try to TLDR it as much as I can. At a high level, it sounds like there are two areas that we need to focus on, and those are the two areas I'm going to split this talk into today. So first, we need to increase visibility, make sure that people know where to find us, and do our best to make sure we're working alongside the rest of the business instead of just getting looped in once something is on fire. And secondly, we need to communicate effectively. So I can make myself and my team super visible by sending 15 mass emails a day, but I would not call that effective communication. So in the second half of this presentation, we're going to go over strategies to just make sure our communications are impactful and they're really having their desired effect. Starting with this visibility piece. So perhaps unsurprisingly, most of the people that I talked to did not know anything about their company's InfoSec teams, and a lot of them didn't know what InfoSec was at all. And most of those people were my close friends who don't know what my job is, which is fine. One individual I talked to who works at a hedge fund told me that the word that he used was non-existent. His security team is non-existent, which was like alarming. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go hack this hedge fund, obviously. But so first I did a LinkedIn search, and I saw that they actually have a really sizable security team that is in the same office as him, which is alarming on many levels. So there's a lot of reasons why fixing this problem is important. Visibility matters. First of all, if people don't know where to find us, they're not going to reach out to us with questions, and they're not going to let us know when something sketchy is happening, which is obviously not ideal from an incident detection perspective. Also, maybe less obviously, being visible is important when we are competing with other business units for resources. So what I'm trying to say is this presentation might help you get that cash money. So what can we do to fix that problem and increase visibility? We can start by hanging out with people in real life. 5. Okay, that's fair. Don't worry, we'll get into how to do this on the interwebs later. But so forming trusted relationships, I would argue, is part of a healthy security program. A lot of the people I talk to think of us as gatekeepers that they're scared of getting in trouble with. So our goal might just be we don't necessarily need to be BFFs if we can just get them to think of us as an acquaintance that they're comfortable shooting a quick question to. That's a win. So I would argue that there is actually a business case for attending the company happy hour. Or you could maybe host your own happy hour or another event with your department just as a reason to get in front of people. Another suggestion I got from interviewees was to crash other teams' meetings. So this guy, his team has a status update meeting every Monday. About once a month, someone from IS or IT joins that meeting and just gets a sense of what everyone's working on and answers any questions they might have. Obviously, you can't do this with every team in your organization, but if there's one team in particular that you want to partner with more closely, this might be a good idea. And he said that it was really helpful, and they offered a lot of really great suggestions. Other excuses to get in front of people in real life: might want to host a lunch and learn every once in a while, or just work from another office so that you're interacting with people you wouldn't normally interact with. Now, for how we can do this online and not have to leave our desks. One suggestion was making a corporate wiki page. So would be a page that sort of lists everyone on your team and everything that they're responsible for at a high level and how to contact them. That's great if you want to just reach out to one person with a question instead of reaching out to a dozen people. You can also consider if there's anyone in your company who would benefit from newsletter or blog style updates from the IS team. This could just be an update on projects your team is working on, or even just like tips for interacting in a secure way. It's whatever is relevant to your audience. Okay, this is my favorite part. I got really into chat ops in the last like 2 weeks. So let's talk about how we're using chat applications. Obviously, I mean, maybe it's not obvious. I find emailing a whole distribution list kind of intimidating. And I even find emailing one person I don't know a little intimidating. So it's great if we can make ourselves available on more casual channels. Hopefully we're on Slack or Skype for Business. Or if you're the one company in the world that uses Yammer, then you're on that. So, in addition to that was a sick burn. In addition to the private IS Slack channel my team has, we also have a public IS channel that anyone in the company can join. This is great because sometimes people join, they see their question has already been answered. Sometimes people answer each other's questions. That's lovely. You can just sit back and watch. Other times, communication works both ways. We get great suggestions from people in this group. And if you're rolling out something new and you want feedback, this is a group of people from across the organization who have some interest in security because they're in the group, and they're probably going to be willing to give you feedback. So it's a great resource in that way too. We can also monitor for keywords on tools like Slack. So a great example of when I did not do this well, an old job, I went to another office and discovered that there was a pretty big miscommunication about a project that my team was working on. So I worked out in person, not a big deal, but I do think I could have avoided that miscommunication altogether if I had been monitoring our public Slack channels for mentions of that project. And then when people were talking about it, just make sure they're all getting the right information, we're on the same page from the get-go. In this Slack monitoring example, I think highlights sort of what I'm going for with visibility here. We don't have to be visible in a disruptive, in-your-face sort of way, contrary to the impression that Nick Cage may be giving you right now. We just really want to be part of the process. So we don't want to swoop in when there's an issue and then like disappear into the night. We want to be working alongside people as much as we can and just part of the right conversations. But we do have to be realistic about our bandwidth. Every time we open a new communication channel, we can be creating a lot of extra work for ourselves. So now we're monitoring all these new notifications. We have to monitor this new IS Slack channel that's open, make sure people aren't going rogue, giving crazy answers. We have to reply to all these people that are sliding into our DMs. It's like a whole thing. It's crazy. But one way that we could maybe solve this problem is to integrate as many of these tools as possible, just to try to keep everything in one place. We don't have to switch gears constantly. My team integrates a lot of tools with Slack. It's a great home base for us. But the best tactics for making your team visible and available are going to be different at every company. I don't know what's going to work for you as well as you do. But there is one strategy that is going to work for all of us when it comes to increasing visibility. And it's like the worst one, but we have to do it. It's planning. Boo, I know. I'm getting booed more than I thought I would. So I am always my boss is here. I'm always trying to convince him to send me to the LA office. If you see him, his name's Josh, just tell him to send me. Just because I want to go to LA, but I don't have like an actual reason to be out there. So leveraging spontaneous visibility opportunities is fine, but I do have to admit we're going to get more of a return on investment if we stick with these more strategic, planned engagements. So this means we have to plan. Bullet 1, think about what type of involvement works for you, and actually think right now about something that you could implement with your team and your company, and then so you can keep that in mind as we move through this wacky cycle. I'm going to use the example of implementing quarterly lunch and learns because that's super simple. We're going to start with a pre-mortem. We're going to think about how it could fail before we even get started. So someone tell me why a lunch and learn quarterly would fail at your company. No free lunch. That's so good. It's really good. I didn't even think of that one. Yeah, maybe you don't have a budget for free lunch, so no one's going to go. I would say, if you're on a 2-person team, quarterly cadence doesn't sound like a lot, but that really is a lot of work. That might overwhelm your team. Maybe the audience that you're talking to wants something that's more direct than an hour-long session. Like, this is only half an hour. It feels super long. So you have to be realistic about what's going to work. And then we want to map back to goals. So like any other work that we do, if we aren't keeping track of this and holding ourselves accountable, it's going to slip through the cracks. So I'm going to go ahead and add host 4 lunch and learns to my team's annual goals. And the other side of this coin, we also want to make sure that our visibility efforts are also connected to even broader team goals. So if one of my team's goals for the year is increase awareness about secure coding, then I could host my first lunch and learn about that. Whatever you want it to be, we don't want to be visible just for the sake of being visible if we can get another goal in there too. So, I'm using a lot of gesticulations today. Feels good. So the next step in planning is going to be practice. We're going to start with a small pilot group. In this case, I'm going to start with one department or one group of people before I roll out lunch and learns to the whole organization. Then we're going to document, make sure we're writing down everything that worked, everything that didn't work, all the information we need to do it again and do it better the next time. And then we measure. So think about whether you accomplish the goals you set out to in the beginning, get feedback. So in this case, I'm going to send a survey to everyone who attended the lunch and learn, see how they felt about it. And then we use all that documentation to update our plan. And we do it again and again forever. Forever. Okay, so we increased our visibility, and now everyone knows who we are and where to find us. And we have so many new opportunities to interact with the rest of the organization. But none of that matters if we're bad at communicating effectively. So based on those conversations I had with people, I sort of broke it down into 3 issues that kept coming up again and again. And it sounds like we need our communications to be intentional and thorough, consistent and prompt, and blame-free. So let's dive into each of those 3. Intentional and thorough. So here is a checklist we can walk through to make sure we're being intentional and thorough. This section could also be called, I took a lynda.com course on organizational communication, and all I got were these 6 bullet points. But they're like fine bullet points, I guess. So again, try to think of an example of an actual communication you're going to need to send out in your organization, a project you're working on that is going to require communicating to another department or the rest of the company, so that you can keep that in mind. I'm going to run through the list using an example from someone I interviewed. This is a law associate who is super peeved about a new policy that requires him to request access to client files from IS. Sometimes it takes 3+ hours for him to get that access, and the access expires after a certain amount of time, so this is something he has to do again and again every day. It makes it much harder for him to do his job. So let's imagine we are the IS team rolling out this new policy. Here's what we need to consider. 1, who is the receiver of this message? So we probably only want to send out this communication to people who need to be involved. First of all, it's good security hygiene a lot of times to send this information out on a need-to-know basis. But also, when people get messages from us over and over that don't apply to them, we become white noise and they start ignoring us. We also want to consider this receiver's goals and priorities. So this kid cares about doing good work for his clients as efficiently as possible because he would like to sleep more than 4 hours a night. So we have to consider his priorities when we're sending out that message. 2, who would be the best sender? So your sender should be influential to the receiver. Let's say that hypothetically I'm a total joke and the open rate of an email for me would be under 3%. Again, completely hypothetically. I might need this message to come from someone else, maybe my boss. 3, what is the focus of this message? Thinking about this will help you keep it succinct and to the point. If the receiver needs to take any action, that should be extremely obvious to them. 4, how will it be interpreted? The way this interviewee interpreted the message, his big takeaway was that the IS team did not understand how the business operated at all. Not an ideal takeaway. If we took the time to explain how this process would limit the ability of an attacker with compromised credentials to access sensitive data, he might be a little less frustrated, and he might be less likely to try to find a way to circumvent this policy. So it's probably worth an extra paragraph in there to explain why it's happening. Also, I mean, the process does seem pretty brutal. I have a hunch about what happened here. There are a lot of new requirements in the legal industry and also in every industry. And sometimes when a new threat or requirement pops up, we have to come up with a quick way to address it, sometimes a temporary, sloppy solution, until we can implement something that's more permanent. And I think it's okay to communicate about that. I think it's okay to let people know that this is temporary and there is something better on the horizon if that is the case. 5 is feedback necessary. And if feedback is necessary, have you explained how they can offer that feedback? I was very surprised that the lawyer I was talking to had not talked to, because he was super mad that he had not talked to anyone in IS or IT about how disruptive this new policy was. I think that if they had offered a clear channel for feedback, he would have reached out and a lot of other people would have reached out, and they could be working towards a solution that works for everyone. 6, last but not least, what is the best channel? Email is usually the easiest and worst option. If you outline this policy in an email, that's not helpful to the associate who starts in 2 weeks and didn't get that message. If something needs to be continually referenced and updated, you can send an email pointing them to those resources, but it shouldn't exclusively live in people's inboxes. Also, if it is a critical communication, we can learn from the best phishing campaigns and use multiple touches. So give that person a call and then send them a link to more resources, because you know 100% of the time you're going to click that link. Okay, so we have established how to be intentional and thorough. Now let's talk about being consistent and prompt. One of the mean quotes I got from interviewees said, if I reach out to 3 different people on that team with a question, I will get 3 different answers. But we can fix that. So let's talk about staying on message. Flying members of your team out to other offices is less effective if they don't know the message they're delivering. Like when I go to LA, I'm going to be super on message. I'm going to know exactly what I'm talking about. It's going to be super useful. So, yeah, I know. Thanks. Josh, you got that? Okay. So maybe think about 3 things, 3 big takeaways you want everyone in your organization to know about how they can help protect the company. It might make sense to really document those and just make sure everyone on your team is well versed in those talking points. Secondly, templates and documentation for all the things. You probably already have a template for company-wide security alerts. If you don't, obviously pull one of those together. Everyone who gets the email knows what they're looking at as soon as they get it, that consistent format. But I think even more importantly, having a template for security alerts or really any company communication forces the person who's filling it out to really think through all the parts that need to be included. You can use that list on the last slide and just making sure that they're not forgetting everything. You might be super comfortable with everything that should be included in an alert like that, but as your team scales and that becomes someone else's responsibility, you want to force them to include all the right information. And when you are answering someone's question, that answer should live somewhere. So start building out an FAQ as early as possible. It's a lot easier to do that as you go than it is when you're adding more people to the team and have to document stuff for them. You'll probably start with a private FAQ, but it would be great if down the road you could also create a public FAQ that's available to other people in the company. And of course, there are ways to ensure we're being consistent and prompt through automation. anytime we're doing something over and over, we look for a way to automate it. This helps me so much because I don't have to constantly remind people to do their access reviews or do their security awareness training. A computer does that for me. It's great. So in addition to saving time, well, so it helps us be consistent and prompt. You know, they get those emails at the right time. We write a great email once, and it's the same one that goes out over and over. It also saves me time, and it makes me feel like less of a jerk because I am not the one emailing them over and over. It's that computer, you know. Don't hate the security analyst. Hate the game. That was so good. I really nailed it. Yeah, it was good. That makes up for all the booing. There's also a lot we can do with chat ops here. We can go above and beyond having those FAQ answers available to copy and paste, and we can employ Slack bots to answer people's questions for us. So if someone uses the phrase guest Wi-Fi, I can have a Slack bot send them to the wiki page where we keep that information. We can also use Slack bots for policy enforcement. So if someone posts something that looks like a secret API key, we can have a Slack bot let them know that they might have made a mistake and they might want to delete that post. Of course, as we have touched on already, automation is a slippery slope. No one knows about alert fatigue better than security professionals, and we don't want to cause communication fatigue on people by over-automating 1,000 messages. Okay, so we've explored how we can improve the quality of communication by being intentional, thorough, consistent, and prompt. Blame-free is the wacky one, but I'm going to explain it now. So I first came across this topic in a blog post by Jacob Kaplan-Moss from last year. In that post, he explores the blameful culture in InfoSec, his words, not mine, that focuses on individual failures rather than systemic ones. So I'm going to use an example and look at the two different ways that we could handle this problem. Let's say a user clicks a link that he's not supposed to. Oop, womp womp. So a blame-focused InfoSec team could maybe chalk that up to a bad apple and say, well, that's the user's fault. He's silly. That's not good. Maybe they get sassy with the user, they close out that ticket and never look back. But we created two problems here. One, that user had a bad experience with us. They're less likely to report an incident next time it happens. That's not great. And two, we didn't force ourselves to explore why this problem really happened, and we missed an opportunity to fix a systemic problem. So what we want to do instead of looking for a person to blame is zoom out and think about how this slipped through the cracks. I want to team up with that user and consider what we could do differently moving forward. Maybe I need to do more end user awareness training. Maybe I need to change my email filters. In general, we don't want to just assume in every situation that someone is good and someone is bad. We want to approach these incidents with a new mindset that something bad happened to us and we want to fix that moving forward. That's really the same reason we don't include names in a root cause analysis. The bottom line is, don't get blame, get solutions, get jokes. I was gonna stand like that until someone made a sound. So I don't expect every strategy outlined in this presentation to work for everyone. Hopefully you just get one or two tips that will work at your organization. I definitely learned a lot having these conversations with people, and I'm really excited to put a lot of the things that I learned into action at Rapid7. Before I go, I just want to say that if, again, this was my first time doing this, I got a lot of help. Check out infosecmentors.net if you are looking for help with a project, or if you want to mentor someone like me. And follow me on Twitter. I tweet dank memes. Good night.
Thank you, Katie. On behalf of Fitbit and BSides, we thank you.